All right. Jazz Cabbage, Rick is here. Anton is here, and Jim's back for the first time in probably about 6-7 weeks, something like
It's
that.
been a while. It's good to be back. Good to see y'all.
Good job, man. Thanks for stopping by again.
Yeah.
Let's appreciate our great sponsors and get it right into it. And of course, Adam's missing at the moment. Just hope he's doing okay. He was on.
Yeah, best wishes to Adam. Yeah.
Yep. There we go.
Jazz Cabbage Cafe is sponsored by that Botanical Company, Redemption Cannabis, Really Solutions, the Detroit Midway Company, ProGreenMI.com, Custom 420 Promos, plus Culture Clothing.
Right on. And Jim left. There he is. Getting prepared.
I didn't leave for as long this time.
Yes.
Just getting prepared. So I guess a couple things. I want to get into like a current. It's not. There's nothing confirmed, but there are some reports of the state of things in terms of the legislature, the big money interest trying to peel back caregiver rights, and the current condition of the MCMA. Just hearing a few things, just kind of want to pass along. Of course, I wish I could be more specific. I just don't have that kind of information. But from what is kind of creeping in as far as news goes, they have the Michigan Cannabis Manufacturers Association has been severely depleted. That doesn't. They're still very well funded. It only takes one of those companies, to keep a lot of funds coming through. And we assume that Chilani and company are keeping that going, and I'm just guessing. I'm hearing there's only a couple companies left, and I'm assuming it's
High Life
and Live Well probably, but don't know anything for sure, and just happy to hear that that's happened. Also, we talked about Linder leaving a couple times and, getting fired or retired or whatever. But finally, there was an official retirement. People still say he was kind of fired, but it was just done a little bit more civilly by way of an official retirement or something. And he left. And now there are some people who believe that there's some more reasonable discussions to be had with this organization, and that they don't have to focus in on peeling back caregiver rights to try to achieve anything, and that there's other things that could be done, like bringing regulation into the commercial system, having a lot of things that need to be addressed and working better, focused on, as opposed to something like that. And also to try to make things more functional, more efficient, getting rid of some of these stupid restrictions and costly, situations and stuff, things that could make things better for everybody without hurting the caregivers. So again, can't confirm any of it, but if that is the truth, and they're credible sources, good people saying this stuff, prefer that situation over having to battle 6, 7, 10 of these big money people that are just out after changing things so radically that we essentially eliminate the caregiver patient system. And we were headed in that direction, and had they gotten their way, that's where it would be. Fortunately, one of these times that's difficult, but that we have done in the past, where we challenge big lobbyists, a lot of money, a lot of influence, where we show up with the truth. They're just wrong on a lot of stuff, and they even believe that they are, correct. Sometimes the lawmakers have good intentions and all this kind of stuff, but this is a complex issue, and even people who are in the industry and very supportive and everything still don't quite understand this total situation, historical perspective, cultural perspective, nature of the product, all the things that are important for good decision making. And it's difficult for everybody, but particularly big money interests that already have a kind of an MO, successful and seasoned industries coming over here and trying to apply that stuff to this emerging, totally different thing. There's been a lot of problems with that. And if we're starting to kind of like slow some of that down or get some of this push in a different direction, that's not, peeling back a lot of the work that thousands of people have come together to achieve over many years, then it just sounds hopeful. And I would like to believe that this is the direction that we're heading in.
Let me provide some background for those of our viewers who may not be familiar with what Jamie was just referring to, because it's rather complex. And if you haven't been paying attention, you might have missed some of the details. In Michigan, there are two real big lobbying firms that are supportive of cannabis issues. The Michigan Cannabis Manufacturers Association is made up of the largest cultivators. It's kind of an elitist society. We never really know how many people were in that, maybe 12, maybe 15 tops, but they were the biggest of the bigs. The other one is the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association, which numerically is far superior, with over 350 different companies. They're the go-to for the cannabis industry associations here. However, the big guys, the MCMA, have notoriously tried to beat down on existing legacy market players in the system. They insisted on tougher regulations to get into the MMFLA in 2016. They were very obstructive during the drafting of the CRMLA legalization ballot initiative in 2018. And their leader, Steve Linder, has notoriously been a thorn in our side for quite a few years. This latest battle for caregiver rights circles around whether or not caregivers in Michigan who are currently able to service 5 patients would be reduced to just a single patient. And instead of being able to grow 60 plants, would be reduced down to just 12 plants in a caregiver role. And we fought very hard against that. It was introduced in the House. It was passed in committee, even though we objected to it. We were successfully able to stop it from receiving a House vote. Then they jumped from House to Senate and tried to launch new Senate versions of these particular terrible bills. We also fought hard against that in the Senate as well. However, the Michigan Cannabis Manufacturers Association have seen some rough times since then. They lost some members. They've had a lot of really bad press. Steve Linder's reputation has been tarnished and almost destroyed by connections to some very nefarious dealings with the Republican Party and some Republican leaders, and the way money was raised and distributed as far as whether it was legally done or not. So the MCMA has been weakened, and it seems as if, according to Jamie's reporting here, that Linder, that longtime thorn in our side, might finally have been pulled from our flesh and tossed aside like a cigarette butt. No one needs any longer.
And I hope it's true. And it seems like a lot of people around him that were kind of relying on his strategy have realized that they were headed down a stupid road. And it's been a long time and a lot of money and not a lot of achievement. So,
and the other thing Jamie's talked about was important. Remember that there are lobbyists that are employed by these people, and they're going to be lobbying one way or another. Doesn't matter whether they're going to lobby for A, they're going to lobby for B, they're going to lobby for C. So if we try and take A away from them, which is this terrible caregiver bill, they still have to lobby for something. And if Jamie's talking about them directing those lobbying activities in a way that would benefit our community in the way that we believe in, that would be a very significant resource to add, a significant asset to add to our side when it comes to getting things right for people and the patients and the users of cannabis here in the state of Michigan. So that would be amazing.
If existing rights are protected, then the real discussion of how to improve things can begin without having to use all of our time and energy and resources just fighting against keeping things from being broken down.
And this battle I just described was at least a 4-year battle, because this is 2021 and 2022 is one legislative session. We stopped them from this bad caregiver bill last session, which was 2019 and 2020. So we've been working on this for a very, very long time. And in fact, if what Jamie says is true, and they are going to stop pursuing the caregiver bill, that's a huge success win for the groundswell of forces that we've had here in Michigan. All of the people on this call, the people that we'll be talking to today on this call, all took part in that. So
Nathan Phillips, Nathan, join us if you want to, man. I sent Nathan a link. I think he'd be good for today's discussion. I kind of wanted to get a little bit into. There's such weird shit going on right now. Obviously,
you have to have a good internet connection too, though, because if you're calling by phone, it oftentimes is a bad deal if it's not strong.
We'll have to see how it works out. But I sent him the link anyway. He put a comment on the show promo today about how he was in boot camp July 4th, 1972 at 17 years old.
Yeah.
Be cool to talk to him. The guy's got a lot of great stories anyway. If he doesn't come on today, we will have him on at some point. Some people may remember him. He got some national exposure when he had kind of a face-to-face with this, at the time, I think a high school
working child.
He was like a little MAGA guy. He was like a Trump guy. And the press misreported on some things. It got kind of twisted a little bit. That kid ended up suing for a lot of money. And Nathan was just the Native American dude who was there, like involved in
playing a drum and singing and chanting a song.
And so he got up in that guy's face, and it caused all this shit. And just so people know him from that. And Nathan had to take a lot of shit for it too. And all he did was his thing, man.
Yeah,
let people know his message. So.
And if he comes on today, that's great. But just to finish up with what we're talking about, the legislature here in Michigan has taken their summer break. They just last week had their very last session day. They'll have one in July, one in August, and they come back in September. So it was a real victory for us over the last 60 days, or let's say, to help the Senate not introduce that terrible bills that we talked about that would impeach caregivers. And by the way, Jamie, you're familiar with this. The rumor was that the Senate version of the bills was much worse than the House version of the bills that we had managed to stop.
I heard that too. And the only thing I can think of is these people, and even many people on our side. Again, there's a lot of great intentions, that just don't help us out all of the time. And some of the thinking when these bills are introduced, and they know there's a little bit of fight ahead, and there's different perspectives on these issues, is you throw in a lot of stuff. You throw in kind of the kitchen sink of just every conceivable little detail of things you might want or that would make your situation better. And you could lose a lot of those in a negotiation and still end up in an area where you're satisfied with the amendments or the changes that you're trying to make. And so oftentimes you see so much shit in there backloaded. It's because they're prepared to get rid of a lot of it in a negotiation. But the problem is this whole thing has been done by way of an unfair process from the beginning. Right. And so there is no negotiation. The negotiation is let's do this over via a fair process.
Right. And the fact is, if the bill looks like a prohibitionist wish list, then it's pretty clear that we're going to have so much work to do to even come to a middle ground where we could potentially even support it. That's
what happened in 2012.
We could do that. Yes, exactly.
In 2012, it's called the Walsh bills. Although Walsh himself was not a total asshole, but the whole package of bills really would have decimated the caregiver system as we know it. We had to fight really hard just to not have it fucked. It didn't improve anything. Those set of bills and passed at 4:20 in the morning during lame duck session. So
after we've been told they were not going to pass, yes.
And as we know, some of these bills are, introduced and through committee and stuff like that. I mean, we still should be a little concerned and scared about lame duck. There's a lot of horse trading that goes on. I have had, been able to be involved in a couple of meetings where there's people, including lawmakers, saying they don't see any traction for this stuff. And as I explained, maybe a change of direction possibly. So all good, but it's not over till it's over. I mean, I'll feel a lot better when we get into next session. Yeah. We're not going to get some of the really good bills. They just don't have the momentum. There's not enough people driving them, but they're good bills, and we can continue to let people know about them and sow the seed and use the rest of this session to maybe get ready for next session. We have the deschedule bill. We have Jaden's law. We have Rep. Johnson's bill to eliminate taxes for patients. I mean, those are all good ideas. And if we're not worried about, or as worried, I mean, these are politicians and lobbyists speaking. Don't accept any of this as the truth yet until we've experienced it, but if we really don't have to fight so hard on protecting rights, maybe we can move forward in some of these ways.
It is tough, though, when we talk about the lame duck session. For those people that don't know, in an election year, you have the election in early November, and the session for the legislature ends in December. And it's that usually 4 to 7 week period in between, 4 to 6 week period in between, where lawmakers know whether or not they're going to be back next year. They know whether or not they have to satisfy their constituents. And sometimes that's when they really let the worst angels speak to them. It's really sometimes when they allow compromises to be made that if they were to be held accountable by their constituents, they never would decide to do. When they feel like the pressure's off, they'll do whatever they want, make whatever kind of horse trading deal that they can manage. And we've seen it happen before. And it really is a danger. There are so many crazy bills out there in the Michigan legislature. There's dozens of different bills proposing changes to the medical or the adult use cannabis laws here in the state of Michigan. and most of them we disfavor. And they could be packaged together in a very attractive bundle. That's one of the things that lobbyists do. They merchandise things. They take a product, a bill, and then they merchandise it by giving it a glossy look and a slick title and then a great paragraph. You need a really great paragraph to describe this law. Whether it's accurate or not doesn't matter. That's one of the reasons why sometimes these bills that you and I and the rest of us know are just horrible to the root, sometimes you get passed because they're just merchandised really well.
So last week, 5512 passed out of the Senate.
That was a merchandised bill too.
And now it awaits the governor. Have to assume she'll sign it. I mean, there's a chance still to get to her. People should. I have. I've tried to write her, and just not feeling hopeful that there is the ability to really stop it at this point. But there's no reason not to be on record on the right side of the history, and there could be some other things that we do. Adam was kind of suggesting on Medical Mondays last night that it's going to pass anyway. Hopefully there's not very many situations where people are really fucked. And when they are, we use it as an example to show people how stupid this was. It's like the best we can do with what we got.
Yeah, I'll be right back. I'm going to log back in.
So Nathan's trying to get in here. We're going to see if it works at all. I don't know if you can turn your camera on, Nathan. I don't know if you can unmute.
Am I unmuted?
You are unmuted, and then we can hear you at least. If you could turn your camera on, that would be awesome. But at least
Well, I kind of have a few things here in the background. I'm in a mess over here at the house. So,
all right, man. So I appreciate you coming on, and I saw your message earlier. And since we can hear you at least, let's talk a little bit or switch gears, because I did kind of want, in the midst of this really, I don't know, whatever you want to define it, obvious change in constitutional interpretations and the things that are happening with SCOTUS now and Roe versus Wade, obviously. A lot of other implications, a lot of other cases coming up this fall. And, it doesn't feel like independence. It feels like we've lost some freedoms to a lot of people. And it's right around 4th of July. And so I've heard and seen a lot of people having these discussions on what the day means to them. And, like if they feel really inclusionary now on this whole, celebration of getting our independence as a country. And, I've seen some pictures of people when they were still enslaved in the 1700s and things like that on 4th of July. Nathan's American Indian, Native. There he is. He served in the military, and he talked about being in boot camp on 4th of July. And he's continued to be involved in a lot of things. I mean, he was in DC for that incident that we discussed, but he's also been there many times for many demonstrations and protests and marches and all types of things like that. So anyway, Nathan, just I'm glad you came on, man. The 4th of July it's an important thing, whether it's something that people are celebrating or being concerned about is another question. But what does it mean to you? First of all, what's going on, and then let us know what what this holiday means to you.
well, thank you for having me on, and I really appreciate everything that every one of you on the screen here has been doing over the last decade that I've been living here in DC, in Michigan. When we got here, there was no medical marijuana, and then when we got here, it happened, and it was really good for my wife. She had that bone marrow cancer, and so I want to say thank you to Jimmy for being for us there during that.
Third Coast at Large helped out.
Third Coast at Large, yes, sir.
Yeah, I certainly did
really
too.
Appreciate
but
it.
a lot of people,
Yep. And so those thank yous, and still here. She's passed away now. This July will be 7 years she's gone on. And never had an idea to be here in Michigan. I had some friends back in the 80s that I went to college in Haskell, and they were from Michigan, and so that's the only time I ever heard about it. But we came here, and we were really blessed to run into a lot of good people and go to the hospital and be a part of a research program that she was a part of. And in the years after she's passed, I kind of went into a shell. I didn't do a whole lot. And you were talking about earlier about what happened in D.C. That incident there is like that was one of the first times I stepped out of the house, without her, and that happened.
Oh, boy.
So I really
that
miss
was
her.
intense, man. That was,
And when we got started, I run a group called Native Youth Alliance, and it's a dream and a vision right now, but we're really in a place of making that dream a reality. When we came here, we're on the verge of making it happen. We had so many things happening, going on, and she was the backbone of it all. We're talking about 4th of July yesterday. I seen the post this morning, and yesterday I was thinking about it. 50 years ago, I was in boot camp, Marine Corps, over there at Camp Pendleton. At the time, I was doing artillery and rifle and that part in the boot camp. And I remember 4th of July night, I had what they called fire watch. And that meant after everybody laid down for the night, I was up and pushing a broom around and making sure nobody deserted on us, But I remember looking out the windows, and across the way there was by the ocean, and across the way there, I could see the fireworks going off. And I don't know, really didn't think much about it other than, well, people were over there and I was here in boot camp and wondering what I was doing there. But I was there because of an abusive foster home. I ran away and I was 17. Marine Corps took me in. So I was there for 4 years. After I got out of the Marine Corps, I drank a little bit, and somewhere along the line, I wound up meeting a lot of spiritual people and started going back to what we call the original instructions, and freedom of religion. Worked on that, We had that right to pray again, And let's see.
Amen.
80, let's see, was it 87, 86? After I first heard about Leonard Peltier, I attended my first Sundance, and I Sundanced, and it was on 4th of July. I did my first Sundance, and I pulled buffalo skulls, and it was back home on my reservation in Nebraska. So anyway, I 4th of July is like a lot of folks wonder, why do I feel, there for a long time, I called myself a patriot, I was a veteran, honorably discharged, I never went to Vietnam, and I never said I did. I'm really upset with this one fella that took credit for being there for me, and he really wasn't. He was there for himself. He was a lead counsel for this Indian law something, but he got on CNN and called me a Vietnam War hero, and that's and never talking to me in his life. He gets on CNN and calls me a war hero, and that caused me a lot of turmoil, because I'm proud to be a veteran, it's and again, people say, well, why you do that? You're an Indian, you shouldn't. And hell, I don't know. Yeah, I've been going to Arlington National Cemetery for about 25 years now. and doing a pipe ceremony for all the veterans that didn't make it home, that are over there. Do a ceremony there with the pipe ceremony. We put water down for the veterans, that are over there, what we call happy hunting grounds, And we pray for all their relatives that are here still, because it's corny sometimes, but the ultimate sacrifice, that means something to me. So I pray for my country, America. I pray for my nation, Omaha, But when he did that, it made a lot of people just really not like it for me, called me stolen valor. That's a bad thing. And it because but
That was such an intense situation that blew up so hugely. And I've been thinking about you a lot during that time, man. Just wondering how you're handling all that stuff.
Oh, God,
that got that twisted, man. I didn't even know that it went down the road where you had to deal with more things on top of it. So
I got jumped over here in Ypsilanti after that. I'm kind of afraid to show my face sometimes, even in here, because look, I got no teeth. He knocked my teeth out. Some drunk guy said, "Oh,
Nathan,
you're that guy."
Didn't I see that on the news? Wasn't that on the news, Nathan? I was pretty sure I saw that.
Nah, that didn't get on the news. What got on the news is that some kids accused me of stealing a lawnmower.
Oh, God.
And I never did that, but I got put in jail for it. And when I was in jail, the police came over to the house that I'm living at, took the lawnmower and gave it back to the people who accused me of stealing the lawnmower. No trial, no nothing. Just came and got it and gave it back to them. Not their lawnmower.
I remember all that too, man. I remember you talking to me about that. Yeah, that's just weird, stupid shit that gets out of control because people think they can take advantage or just run roughshod over you. Hey, so before we move on a little bit, man, I've had the discussion with you before, and in just to kind of condense it a little bit, let people know about. I'll set it up a little bit for you, but the time in which you really were turned on to cannabis, and it was really a significant time in your life. I know that you were incarcerated at the time, or you were in some type of program or something, and you had to get special permission to leave to go to an event. And you thought that you might drink, and because you had a couple of days, you thought you might drink and get away with it. And then you were turned on to cannabis.
Well, okay, I'll go ahead and tell that story. I guess this is my official coming out time. Before now, I've always never admitted that I smoked cannabis or used the medicine or call it my sacrament. I've always kept it, quiet because of how people react to it. And being here in Michigan, it's a lot easier, So, and I see my relatives there. I'm kind of wishing I was sitting with you guys so we could, kind of pass that around, So let's see. I'm sober now. This October will be 38 years. I'm sober. This past spring will be 37 years that I had my spiritual awakening moment.
Nice.
So yeah, I never felt like I was an alcoholic or nothing like that. I just played the game, Winter come around, it's too cold, so I say, okay, I'm an alcoholic. I stay at a place and hang out there. And I did that for 2 winters. And this was the second winter I did that. And so I sat there. But I met an elder, Isaac O'Benick, and on the Potawatomi Reservation there in Kansas. And this is where I sobered up. And so 6 months into my sobriety, my grandma passed away. and folks wanted me home for her funeral, because I was really close and they just needed me there for traditional reasons. And so I got home. I got a permission to go home from the halfway house, and grandma died, and I was on my way back, and I was just not liking it. I was 6 months sober. It was springtime. I said, well, it's time to hit the roads again, hit the street, go back to drinking, go back to my life, and but I went up there to Nebraska. This was from Kansas, and I was on my way back, and I got picked up by a trucker out of Sioux City, Iowa, on 29 going down to Kansas City. It's about a 4-hour drive, 6-hour drive, something like that. He picked me up, and the whole way he wanted to drink. He wanted me to have a beer, and I told the halfway house, and well, I did tell him, I give you my word that I won't drink, and that was one of the things that I but then on the way back, grandma passed away. Things were, what am I going to do? Things aren't getting better. And it was also the same time as what we call the first thunders. And that's when spring and the rain comes and the first thunders happen. And for the Omahas, that's a new year. So I had this, this truck driver took me down to Kansas City, Missouri. The halfway house was in Topeka, Kansas, which was like 60 miles away. So I was back, like Jamie was saying, got back 2 days early. And so on my leave from the halfway house, so I thought, well, I could get drunk tonight because the truck driver had all this beer and all this whiskey, and I could just get drunk and have a good time, take the whole day and the next day to clean up, sober up, and then get back to the halfway house and nobody would know it. So the guy went inside to go get some cigarettes or something. He said, I'm going to go into truck stop and I'll be back out. He came out with a fella with him. This fella was an indigenous fella. And this other fella, he was an American truck driver. I don't want to say he was white, but he wasn't black. But to me, he didn't have color. To me, he was a demon. I'm going to say that. I believe he was a demon. He was an agent of the dark side. And this indigenous person who came in, he was an agent of the light. Maybe he was an angel, But he came in and he said, you want a beer? And that truck driver says, no, I've been asking after him to drink with me all the way from Omaha, Nebraska. He won't drink. He don't drink. And I looked at that guy. He had a beer in his hand. Or no, the guy had a beer in his hand. And the other guy so he popped out a joint. I didn't know it was a joint. It was a cigarette. You want some mota? He said. And I didn't know what that word meant then. And I said,
Spanish for cannabis.
What? Yeah. And that's what he said. I said, no, I don't do that shit. I said it just like that because, before this, I really wasn't, I was the guy in high school who came up to you and said, do you got any of that marijuana? And you showed me your bag. I would take your bag and dump it out in front of you and say, what you going to do? That's the kind of guy I was. Sorry I was that way. I apologize for that. And that's so I told that guy, I said, no, I don't do that shit. And I reached for the beer and I said, okay, I'm going to have a beer. And I reached for the beer and I know I had that beer. It was cold in my hand. And I reached it back, but it was that joint. And in that moment, I said, what the hell, And I lit it up, and I lit it up. And in that moment, there was, like I said, there was thunder and lightnings going on. It just went like that. And all of a sudden, I was in a place. It put me somewhere, and I was smoking it, and I was like, it was my first ever medicine, my first ever sacrament. And it put me in a place because I really believe in the spiritual world. And that's what I was doing those 6 months, is trying to get back to my spiritual life, you know, try to colonize my mind. And when it was all dark in there, and I could see a little bitty light there. And in that little bitty light, there was this figure materialized, a little woman, you know, and she had something in her hand like this. And in her hand, she had something there. It was big, long, something like that. She offered it to me. When we offer something, we offer it 4 times in a sacred manner, like that. And on that fourth offering, she said, "Use me, don't abuse me." And ever since then, I just been sober every day, doing what God wants me to do. Use the medicine when I can, and I don't got it, I just pray. It comes to me. It's been kind of tight here lately because they're trying to throw me out of my house right now. Landlord wants to sell the house, and so we're trying to figure out how to keep me in the house because somehow I lost my Section 8, which was paying for the house, and without that, and without a job, and, you know, it's just I don't know what to do. So anyway, still proud American, still proud Omaha. You know, I'm still going to pray for all my veterans. I'm not gonna quit, but I do believe that this is that time when we came here. We're at a place where we were going to get a place and open up the Native Youth Alliance home, a place for children, a place for folks who are in need. And we didn't know where that was going to be, you know. And that's when the cancer came in and interrupted the whole dream. Now that she's gone and here I am, I feel like I'm being pushed back into the work of things, you know. If I could get this house, it would be the Native Youth Alliance house. It would be the dream of having a safe place for children that need. You know, it would be a pilot home that would go throughout the country to different reservations, different communities, you know. We're still going through struggles, you know, and what I'd like to do is to have like ranches, different places where we're growing hemp, marijuana, medicine, you know, because I had a brother, he's from Alaska, and he used to believe that the second coming was this medicine. He believed that the second coming was the medicine, and that nobody's seeing it. But if we really did honor and respect this medicine the way we should, we could heal so many people. So much could change. This extraction industry could just come to a stop. You know, we got trees out there that are 1,000 years old, and people want to cut them down. You know, we don't got oil left. They're doing something called fracking, you know, because there's no oil left, and they're trying to seep out the oil, you know, like a sponge. You know, they're going down there, and that oil, it's destroying our earth. You know.
You were helping out in South Dakota too, with helping to protect the water.
Water protectors. Mm-hmm.
Yep, exactly. That's where we're at, you know, and so it really gets difficult for us Indigenous folks here because, like my Omaha people, we've never had a war with America. You know, we've had a heritage of peace, and that's what it says on our flag. But yet, because we are at peace with America, we were taken almost to genocide. My Omaha people, about 180 years ago, almost 200 years ago, we were taken down to less than 1,000 individuals. Today, we're about 10,000 people, my Omaha people. But we're survivors of genocide. I'm a survivor of genocide.
It's intense, man. I also really hope that you have a change of fortune with the house. A lot of people are getting rid of their houses right now because of the amount of money they can get for it and stuff. And some people are put in that shitty situation. So really sorry to hear about that. And I do hope that gets resolved.
I do too.
I'd love to hear Anton's response to what you just heard from Nathan. Anton is a vet that's on our regular caster. Nathan, go ahead, Anton.
Nathan, thank you for your service, brother. I am a former artilleryman myself, so I think a lot of what you said definitely resonates. Being a proud American, and I think people ask us why we do what we did, right? And we've taken an oath, and I think to many of us that oath is sacred, an oath to defend the Constitution, even when we don't agree with things, or even when the government has harmed us. I think having that courage and that camaraderie among other veterans, in the belief that what we did mattered, in the belief that we were trying to do good, even sometimes when the government isn't doing good. And that really resonates. And, I think another thing, as far as our indigenous people, lately we've had conversations about other cultures. And personally, for me, I don't think the indigenous people have been highlighted enough, and what we can do to not only foster such a great people, sacred people to America. And I think that, anything we can do as a society to help you and your mission, we should be doing. And when you talk about the sacrament, I will say that as a combat veteran, myself, those medicines, those plant medicines, are sacred sacraments. For me, ayahuasca was one of the most healing medicines I've ever had the pleasure of taking, into my body. And when you say like the second coming, being the medicine, that makes complete sense to me. I've grown up Roman Catholic, right? But that was never really my thing. And when I came back from combat, one of the things I was taken into the Native American church. I'm not Native American myself, but there was a Native American church who accepts combat veterans in for ceremony. And the peace and love that I have felt with the Native American culture, it is my religion, and I respect it highly, and I appreciate everything you said, and I wish you nothing but good things, my friend.
Aho, Semper Fi.
Aho.
Wow. It seems like almost petty now when I'm hearing about some of the criticisms of 4th of July and independence and stuff based on kind of, just very current events. There's a deep connection here to, being a patriot in this country, especially if somebody who's been through so much shit like Nathan, and maintaining that throughout. I'm impressed. It's very
heavy stuff. That's heavy stuff. That's real talk right there.
I'm inspired by you, Nathan. I remember you coming into Ulm way back in the day on Main Street there in Ann Arbor, and it's really good to see you. I'm inspired by your strength and your commitment to progress, and your commitment to other people and to the Dakotas, and to just the earth. I've seen you on campus with your activism, and this is your country before it was ours. And I just appreciate your culture and so much because of your commitment to nature and the earth. And so thank you for being here. Thanks for coming on.
I've known you a number of years, Nathan, and I've always enjoyed our conversations every time we get together. And I'll just say, hopefully the viewers of this show will be able to maybe find a way to help you out. If someone did want to give you some assistance, Nathan, how would they reach out and make contact with you?
I have a Native Youth Alliance Facebook page. I'm also on Facebook for the first time, Nathan Phillips. There's a a GoFundMe helped save Nathan Phillips's home, put up by my friend Raven, and I'm just really humbled that she did that. She heard what was happening to me, and she just asked, "Could I help?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, help however you can," you know. And I didn't. But the next day, there was this GoFundMe up, and so we're going to rewrite it because I want it to reflect more about Native Youth Alliance and what I want to do with that than trying to. I feel like selfish trying to just that place for myself, you know. It's like if it was just me, I'd be okay.
You deserve a place to live, man. You know.
Thank you, Jamie.
Especially our veterans. Every veteran should always have a place to call home, no matter what. You know, Nathan, have you reached out, or has any veteran organizations
No,
come
because
your way,
because of the hate I received. Because what that lawyer and them Chase Iron Eyes got on CNN. Oh, Nathan's a war hero. I'm afraid to stick my head out. Guys, this is the first time I've even mentioned that I'm a veteran since that time. First time I ever said it.
Just because some other man made a misspoke or tried to put a little extra frosting on the cake, certainly you shouldn't have to be penalized as to your tradition, your history, and your service. Certainly.
Thanks, Rick.
So, I mean, we are joined by Tim Kurkowski. We're kind of wrapping up here with Nathan. Thanks for joining us, Tim.
If I could add something with Mr. Nathan.
Please.
Hi.
You know, hello, nice to meet you. A really important thing I learned a long time ago in therapy was you have to buckle your own seatbelt and put your own air mask on before you can help other passengers.
Right.
So don't ever feel like getting yourself situated is somehow taking away from the help you're trying to provide to other people. You have to have your mask on and your seatbelt on. You have to be safe before you can help other people to your fullest extent.
Thank you.
So don't ever forget that. Don't allow yourself to be okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Aren't you glad that you logged on to Jazz Cabbage Cafe today, Nathan? I mean,
I sure am.
I was excited just to see that you were a viewer today, and I'm so happy. And you know, this broadcast goes out on Apple Television, it goes out on Roku TV. This audio is going to go out on Spotify, Alexa, so many different platforms. Hopefully, we'll really have some more notoriety brought to your situation.
Very cool. And I think I was on a show with Nathan. It was broadcast out of Ypsilanti, kind of kitty corner on the Michigan Ave and Hamilton, like where the bank is and stuff. And Nathan told the story of learning about cannabis and using cannabis, and it was the part where he reaches for a beer, grabs a beer, and pulls his arm back, and there's the joint ready to go.
Yeah,
I thought that was pretty intense, and the way you describe it is awesome. I'm glad that you did find cannabis.
Yeah.
I am too.
Or the cannabis found you.
Cannabis found me.
Alcohol has
Yeah.
done a tremendous amount of damage to our veteran community. And, cannabis is the light, as far as I'm concerned, in our community, and it's helped veterans not only live but prosper. And that's you can't attribute that to too many things that have entered into veterans, be it prescriptions or alcohol or too many other substances. So we're on the right path.
It's important to note, too, that many times when people are using cannabis, they don't have to do it under a doctor's guidance. They're using cannabis and it resolves problems. I can't get to sleep, so I smoke some cannabis, I go to sleep. I can't eat, so I smoke some cannabis. I have some hunger, and now I can eat. I can't keep my pills down because I'm too nauseous. I smoke some cannabis. Now I can handle that, too. People have been using cannabis for millennia to solve medicinal problems. In a lot more forms than we use it right now, because frankly, we don't eat cannabis the way that it historically has been eaten. That some of the extracts that we make from cannabis are things intended for inhalation only, and we know from whole plant medicine that there's just so many different ways, so many other ways too. So the fact that cannabis is coming back at a time when maybe the planet really needs cannabis to be here, from an ecological perspective, from a fuel perspective, from a social perspective, from an understanding, clarity, and love perspective. Maybe this is the time for Nathan's dream to become true.
And it comes to mind, Nathan and Mr. Is it Anton talking about the stigma around veterans? You know, a very dear friend of both Rick and Jamie and myself is a professional athlete who experienced the same like hard stigmatism about, you know, like about weed. Like he was a professional. We're talking about Darren McCarty, 4-time Stanley Cup champion, you know, Red Wing hero. And it was just weed. You, in terms of professional sports, you might as well have been talking about heroin. Like you might as well have been talking about crystal meth.
Any controlled substance.
It was just because it was, you know, it was debilitating to ownership. If you got in trouble, it was debilitating to your career. But fuck all the fucking beer, dude. You can have a case of beer waiting in your fucking dressing room, in your locker.
Oxy Lortabs. Hey, bring it on.
A blank prescription tab for oxys and all the pills. But no weed. No, weed's like fucking doing meth. It's just backwards.
Worse.
It's just been backwards for so long. Yeah.
It's been put on a list that didn't belong on. And then
Yeah.
Well, and we look at worldwide. I just did a little bit of a report on the United Nations drug assessment, and again, cannabis use is up as more nations are coming to either a medicinal state or an adult use state, and as the international traffic in cannabis becomes more and more prevalent. We're seeing connections that exist now between Latin American countries and European countries where there really wasn't a whole lot of commerce before. So we're seeing it, the beginnings. We're seeing the babies start taking its first steps, right? The wonderful adult warrior that cannabis is going to grow to be. We're just seeing the baby take its first steps. The fact of the matter is, those of us that have been involved in it since before legalization, we're so proud to see everything go down the way that it is. I wish that there were some changes. I wish there were things done differently. Social justice has never really been realized. Social equity, not in Michigan, not anywhere in the United States. And I still think we have way too many people like Leonard Peltier in prison. But when you look at how we're evolving, I think this is just the infancy of a huge thing.
No doubt. You can feel it. You can feel it on a daily basis, you know, especially when you're in the industry.
Hey, Nathan, you're welcome to hang out, be part of the discussion for as long as you want. Really appreciate you coming on and talking to us, and positive vibes. Hope that helped get something going, some interest.
Thank you. I'll hang out if that's all right. I just want to say thank you for letting me say a few things that have been on my mind for a few years now. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. What an intense situation that was. It was really interesting to hear more about it. Thanks for that. Being willing to do that. It's difficult as it has been. So Tim Kurkowski has jumped on, and you were on the show before, but it was a while ago when we were meeting at the studio.
I think I was on once early in the pandemic by video too, I think.
Okay. Yeah, well, that was
you were on your show.
MiNORML
Your awesome studio, though.
Oh, yeah. That was awesome. I was just watching that the other day. I have people talk to me about your guys' appearance on my podcast all the time. That's still one of the most viewed ones. That and
Timcast.
Timcast with a K. Yeah, that's one of the most viewed Timcasts is when you guys were on. And I love that episode because my son produced that. It was so cool because he was in the booth producing it. And you guys, man, we were medicating all the way up until we hit record. Even after, I think. And it was just really cool experience because my son was there producing and you guys were there. And he got to really – I was cool because my son got to sort of touch the movement by producing that episode. You know, he got to touch – without being all the way involved and stuff. Like, he sort of got to touch the movement via you guys,
And Rick was a surprise. I just brought Rick over. You actually,
Yeah.
correctly just had me coming on. And then I just showed up with Rick.
No,
And the show was saved. That's right. And
Well, that's probably
and now
true.
it's the most watched instead of just a boring kind of an episode.
Yeah.
But Tim, just
We'll
a
have to
little
do another. We'll have to do another one of those sometime, because like that was so. That was when they screwed you on the signatures, and like so much has happened since then.
That was national news at that point when we talked about stuff on Timcast. That was the same thing that was being reported on at that moment by CNN and others too, because we were in the midst of collecting signatures. We collected over 320,000, but because Michigan has a 180-day rule, any signatures not collected within a floating 180-day window would be discarded, and unfortunately, that would leave us short. And we engaged in a lawsuit against the state, and were not victorious in that, and had to repeat our efforts in 2018 and get legalization.
Because back then there was a way to rehab those signatures that get more than 6 months. We argued that was an undue burden, that there was more modern ways of double checking that with the voter roll that was online, and not to get too deep into it, but we were denied ballot access, and we were pissed about it. So.
That was big news throughout the United States, what was going on.
Oh, and then they were going to change the rule, and the one guy got up and ran out. The
running Republican, Norman Schenkel. Running Republican. He was just involved in this whole big issue about denying ballot access to a whole bunch of Republicans who did not submit enough ballot signatures because they were fraudulently taken advantage of by signature collectors who were seduced by $20 a signature into cheating. So, but the running Republican. That's so great.
Is that background?
That was.
Oh,
it's a background leaf blower. I'm sorry. They're finishing up. I'm at the office.
Right on. So, just a little background. I mean, people should know that you are a legitimate rock star.
I was.
With a big rock band for like 10 years. Sponge from Detroit.
I was a Sponge from 99 to 2009. I was in a handful of other local Detroit bands before I got my big break with Sponge. Nice. So I was very lucky, and transitioned from Sponge into radio, and from radio into real estate. And then, I started getting involved. I had some close friends that were in the legalization movement as we got into the 2010s. And I kind of got involved and started poking around, started meeting the players. And I was lucky enough to, be introduced and get to know Jamie and Rick. And my first cannabis business was I represented Darren McCarty, as we talked about, from the Red Wings, in his first cannabis licensing deal with a company called PinCanna in Pinconning, Michigan. And that was amazing. Darren and I knew each other for years from the music business. And then we reconnected. Darren wanted to do a podcast, so I produced a podcast for him and with him for a while. And an opportunity came up when we were producing Darren's podcast. Somebody said, "Hey, are you working with Darren? We'd like to talk to him about a licensing deal." And that was PinCanna. That was my friend Brian McCarroll, who was part of the Radical Genetics crew, who became the growing arm of PinCanna. And they said, "We'd like to talk to Darren." So I was lucky enough to be put in a position to negotiate Darren's licensing deal with PinCanna and help him launch his product, and gave me a lot of experience, man. We were all over the state. I got to meet provisioning center owners all over the state of Michigan in the UP as we rolled out Darren's product. And that was super valuable, man. Just driving all over the state as we were rolling out his product. And I got to drive in, anytime I saw a provisioning center sign on the freeway, I always got off, try to check out as many provisioning centers in the town that I could. So a couple of years working with Darren up the I-75 corridor and out the 94 corridor and 96 corridor, I got to meet quite a few people who were, selling weed throughout the state, and gave me a lot of firsthand experience. And I'm lucky enough to parlay that into a operations position with Joyology. And that's where I am right now, working for the folks at Joyology. And I'm really happy to be here, man. I found a really good company of people, guys. I really feel like I found the good guys in Michigan cannabis, especially for Southeast Michigan, Metro Detroit. These guys are compassionate. These guys are humane. These guys are thoughtful of the medical owners. They're thoughtful of the legalization movement that got us here. And it's very rare to have ownership, and founders and investors that actually get that. And boy, am I lucky. Joyology, the folks here at Joyology really get it. And I'm really lucky to be here.
Explain the Joyology family. You have a retail plus cultivation.
Yes. Well, the cultivation is loosely related. That's the cultivation piece is more members of ownership, the ownership class of the company. They have other arrangements in cultivation and processing. Joyology, my position in the company that I'm working for, which is specifically Joyology, we are a retail. We're Wayne, Michigan, Wayne, Michigan Avenue, right across from the Ford plant, Centerline, Burton, just outside of Flint, Reading, Quincy, Lowell, sort of in that Battle Creek, Grand Rapids area. We have other stores, other locations coming online soon. I think I'm allowed to talk about Bay City. This company is also working on something that I'm not really allowed to talk about, but it's a model. It's an approach to the business that nobody has had the vision to do yet in Michigan. And I'm really excited to be a part of it. Again, it's kind of like, I'm not trying to be, all that about it. It's just, we haven't rolled it out and I don't want to show any cards. But there's a step that Joyology's in Coldwater and Reading near me. Yeah, there is a Coldwater location. Yeah. Thank you so much, Judy. Yeah. I hope you're enjoying your Joyology products and services. Please let me know if there's anything we can do to improve. But yeah, this next move that they're about to make is going to be pretty exciting to watch. It's I can go so far as to say that it involves distribution. So
Tim, I can tell you right now, the cannabis industry in Michigan might need a different way of doing business. This race to the bottom in cannabis pricing has left cultivators, retailers, and everyone else within the supply chain really questioning exactly how they're going to stay in business. So if there's a better way to build a new mousetrap, people will flock to it.
Well, these guys are going to give it a shot. I believe in what they're doing technically and mechanically. I guess what I'm saying is I'm excited to see it happen. And I'm excited that I get to help. It's going to be pretty cool. Yeah. So like you said, yeah, you're right. And I hope people are I hope people are using, Rick, the metrics that are available. Like, I hope people know what Brisboe does every month, and what, there's good data. You can see who's renewing what licenses each month. You can see, how the flow of approval is happening based on the monthly report from CAR. So I hope as this pendulum, because we're such a overcorrecting country, you know what I mean? And now that we're doing this race to the bottom, I'm worried about how far is the pendulum going to correct? You know what I'm saying? Are we going to have a dry 2 years all of a sudden because of the overcorrection? So I don't know. I encourage anybody who's out there, especially people who are running, provisioning centers or any license in the vertical. I recommend you utilize the monthly statistics that come out from the association, because there's some valuable data there that can give you some foresight on what's coming.
Well, they also break down sales data as far as product type too. So you can see exactly how big flower is versus how big vape carts are versus medibles. Those are typically your three largest components of the cannabis sector in all states. But the mixture of each individual state is completely unique. And in Michigan, flower, which they consider, they call bulk flower and trim, they lump that together. That's anywhere between 56 to 60% of the market. And then everything else below, including vape pens, which typically runs about 20-ish% of the market or more, and then medibles too. So there's just a ton of data, and yet still we talk to the director every month, Anton and I, with the Consumer Connection, and they continually say they cannot release more data from the metric system. They're not allowed to because of privacy rules contained within the CRMLA. But I'd like to see individual store data come out. I'd like to see manufacturing data. What's the top selling this in the state? What's the top selling that in the state? The metric system knows all that data. It knows it all. It's like,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, speaking to that, there are some third-party vendors that are pushing that, just so you know, Rick. There's third-party vendors in the space that they're already planning on, I guess you call it collaborative data, so like they want to create opt-in programs for retailers and suppliers to be able to peak reciprocally, and to peek into each other's. So in other words, they want us to opt in so that MKX, a trusted brand, can peek in and look at our stock. What do we have on hand? So they can make more educated sales calls to us instead of just knowing us, just selling us more. They can have a look inside. One of the companies is calling it a bridge. The company's called Headset, and they're amazing reporting and data, business intelligence company, and they're built for weed by weed people. And they're early in the stages of something called Bridge, where cannabis retailers, cannabis manufacturers can opt in and get a look into each other's supply. So we could, conversely look into MKX and see how much they have available, or, how much the historical data on our orders with them. And then the bridge would then allow them to look in and see how much do we have on our shelves? How many edibles, how are we sitting for MKX edibles carts? And their sales calls to retailers become more actionable, not just fluffy sales calls. It's like, hey, I see you're low on Pineapple Express gummies. How about we make a bigger order this week or something, So not quite the public aspect of what you're talking about, Rick, but I believe that will lead to more public disclosure of those. Once people start sharing them in a closed manner, it's a natural step to start opening some of that data up to the public. So.
We have seen some online sales services, Leafly, for example, some of those services through which people make online ordering, and also Ease, which is a cannabis delivery service too. They all seem to have different statistics and data about the particular brands that they feel are number one in their services. However, that's always limited because it's only the brands that they happen to carry in that particular service or under those particular parameters. It's not a whole statewide look. I can also see, though, Tim, where, the degree of disclosure you just discussed seems like it's ripe for corporate espionage, right? That's a lot of data you're giving out there.
Yeah, but the funny thing is like the internet's undefeated. Data is undefeated. I kind of lump data in with the internet. Data is undefeated, So yeah, I know you're right. And believe me, my owners are aware of that. Like, and as an operations person, whenever I'm reporting to ownership, I always say, hey, we don't have to share this. Like, do you want to share this? What of this do you want to share? So yeah, I guess it leaves it open, but I always believe in the fact that if it's all out there, it's really hard to weaponize something that's just available for everybody, but it's until it's available for everybody, I guess it can be weaponized, right?
Well, the Cannabis Regulatory Agency seems to believe that in order for them to give greater information from metric, they would have to have a legislative change. They would have to have an alteration of both the MMFLA and the CRMLA. That just harkens right back to what Jamie was talking about, concern about bills passing late in the year. They could throw something out there that sounds completely legit, like what we just described, and then all of a sudden all these additional bills get thrown into the mix, and then people are voting on a package and bad stuff happens. But Tim, if that's the case, if they need some legislative action, they might have to wait till 2023 to get it.
But like, is there anything that says, in other words, is there an opening to where these third-party vendors that I'm talking about, where they, based on a client arrangement, they decide to make this stuff public. Is there anything legislatively preventing that? In other words, the prescription's not in the language, but is there anything preventing us sharing? And I don't know.
I think the barrier there would be taking Michigan's privacy controlled metric data and then sharing with those third party individuals in the first place. And the concern would be exactly what you described, that they would take that and try to use it to merchandise that information and make money from the public data, at the risk of some of the corporate fitness that their licensees might have.
It's like health records or the HIPAA system that they just don't want to release. It has, from my gatherings, when the meetings that Rick and I have had, is it's just protected information. So I don't know. That's a good question though, Rick. Would a third party?
Oh, I think about even before legalization came, MMJ Menu was a really popular place that dispensaries used. And when they closed down, just as regulation and legalization came to Michigan, and I think Colorado is where they're based, they apparently wiped everything clean that they had. And that was it. Like there's no sharing of any of that information, which I think was pretty admirable.
There was a real concern there that the federal government was going to take that information and then utilize it to charge companies for interstate transfer of cannabis, because literally in some instances, people in Nevada were ordering from California, and the feds, that's a no for them. So MJ Biz Menu was really one of the leaders of the industry back then. Now there are several services. Leaf Link, I think, some of the others.
It almost seems like the data would have to be mined by these third-party organizations and put out that way. As long as the information doesn't come from the state system itself, that would be the workaround.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, and I've dealt with this in real estate because we have access to curated public record data as licensed brokers, but we can't share that because we only have access to that curated data by way of a third-party agreement, a third-party vendor, right? But it's interesting what you mentioned, and you really got me thinking now about the data, because I'm always thinking about data integrity, data ownership, data, transparency. Data is takes up almost all of my time. The thing is that yes, we are pulling data from Metric, but Rick, I think that more of the data, I think there's more data being created by our seed to sale programs than by Metric. Metric is dog shit. It has some data in there, but it's really limited. It's not robust. It's not elegant at all. Metric is fucking Windows 95. It's terrible. And throughout the course of retail business, I think we're adding more data on to what Metric has than Metric is even storing. So I think we own more data than Metric does.
I would say that's probably true, because when you imagine, first of all, there are hundreds and hundreds of retail centers across the state of Michigan. Recording each individual transaction, taking something out of inventory means it's no longer in the system, and it's had a whole long life history too. There's a lot of storage and a lot of power that has to go into just making sure that system doesn't go down. I just received a notice the other day that the system was down for a while. So that does sometimes happen too. But I bet you're right. I bet there's more data in our data banks than there is in the Metric thing. But the Metric stuff would probably have the more demographically relevant info, I think, as far as.
Well, it seems like not only data, but the quality of data is what matters as well, because you can collect as much data as you want. If it's all bullshit filler, it doesn't mean anything. So it's being able to take the data, mine the data, and then create quality statistics and quality information that can then be passed on and utilized. That would be the secret, I think.
Yeah, well, Anton, you missed something in there. I mean, you got almost everything. I agree with the flow of what you said, but the one thing is scrubbing it against your other systems. So taking our Leaf Logics like we use for seed to sale, right? And then it's funny because they're all talking from the same API. Like everybody has the same API. And for people listening who aren't nerds, API is just how different computer systems talk to each other. That's it. That's all it is. Getting data between different systems. And it's all coming from the API, right? It's all coming from the metric API that talks to your seed to sale API. But guys, the differences, like I come from recording music, like you record the music and then you turn the speakers up and you hear what you just recorded, right? With these data systems, it's very rare that you get the same number in two different places. And that's just, the systems are so young. The systems are so young. And everything that we're using was converted from another thing. Like Leaf Logics was a restaurant wholesale program, I think. It had something to do with restaurants or something like that. Metric was a farming and agricultural program, that just got sort of converted. So it's such a new business, and all of these systems are just converted systems from some other industry, So it's funny, we talk about data, and like you're talking, being hungry for that transparency and that additional data. I'm here to tell you, we're still trying to get the systems right.
Taking that data and making it to where somebody can then query it. And when you want to go to the lowest common denominator, the person right at the bottom of the food chain, you want them to be able to go into that system, be able to utilize the information that they can find. And, one thing we know about government databases, I mean, I've dealt with many of them over the years, and they're all garbage, and they're all not user friendly, right? I think to a point, I believe they do that on purpose just to mess with people. But if you can, getting the information and then being able to bring it to the lowest common denominator, whoever that may be, that is another trick, because people, their database systems are just garbage. Like you said, they're just converting different databases, and they're just not, they don't translate to the industry that you're trying to focus on. If you say food services industry isn't going to translate to the weed industry, right? And it's just not. And being able to translate that's another secret. Probably a lot of money be made in that.
Oh yes, and the winners, the leaders in that space, the players are Leaf Logics, Dutchie, Trees, Blaze. There's probably a handful more. Distru is another one, really good one. The winners are the guys and gals that are rewriting it. Yeah, they might have had to buy a platform like Leaf Logics did. It was written in .NET in 2013, but they bought it, got the subscriber base, and now you heard it here first. Don't tell anybody, but they're completely rewriting Leaf Logics, the back end of it. So I'm really excited about that. The companies that are buying these old platforms, but then while they're servicing the old platform, they're rewriting something bespoke, made for cannabis. And that's happening. The company that we use, Leaf Logics Dutchie, they're actually doing that right now. So we're really excited about getting the new code that's actually written for cannabis. So
that's a major uptaking, because here's the thing is, you have an industry that's just mainly focused on profit, right? And I think a lot of times they forget that the investment in the coders, like information is the only thing, in my opinion, that's worth more than money, right? And the people who are able to create that information are worth the investment. And the people who are willing to invest in those folks, who are willing to attract that type of skill level and that type of talent, those are the guys that are going to win, because you can go get coders dime a dozen, right? And they'll write some bullshit for you, and shit ain't going to work, right? And then and you move on, and then you move on to the next system. And so sounds like if you're making the proper investments in the right people, you're going to win.
There's quadrillions of data points that they have to protect too. So whenever you're talking about changing the backend, changing the actual software that operates the whole website, the whole system, there's always the danger of loss of data. And you have to have the right people to protect that, because imagine all of the trust level that your clients have with you is so easily shattered because of what Tim said. Look at all the names of all the competitors out there too. They could easily jump ship if they're not satisfied. So you have to be extra cautious to do it right and do it just once, because people don't mind a single inconvenience, but boy, you put them hurting a couple of times, you're in trouble.
No, you can't get them back from a couple. No. You can really, if you're a really good retailer and a really good service provider, you can bring them back from one, but damn, not two, you know?
Yeah, I don't want people taking my data. I don't want people knowing what I'm buying. I don't want it to attach me and my demographic of who I am as a person. I don't.
Yes,
I really don't. I don't like that.
You don't even care if it's your name and stuff. You just don't even want your
residue,
information.
any data residue. Yeah, and that's fair. And we're gonna have to handle that as an industry, because I mean, look at the movement. Look at what all of us went through with social media. Okay, we played with social media. We all got in the pool. Well, then somebody shit in the pool. Now people are peeing in the pool. You know, so now nobody's even swimming in social media. You know, and now people are so hyper aware of all their data points and all the the Netflix documentary and everything. People are so hyper aware. And I think, like, thinking ahead for us, and we've talked about this operationally, is like, we basically are going to have to talk to our clients one-on-one and say, we want to get a hold of you with shit about cannabis. That's very difficult to do legally and by regulation. Would you like to opt in? That's basically what cannabis retailers have to do. It has to be a one-on-one verification of opt-in, so that it never goes to junk mail, so that from the beginning of the conversation, everybody was consenting. The customer was consenting, and you, Jim, you had every right to say, no, I don't want to play in the sandbox. I just want to come in here and buy weed when I want to come in here and buy weed. Thank you so much. And we might push back and say, hey, we want to spend just, special offers. We're going to do some really juicy deals in this. And he says, no, I don't want any. I want to keep my data footprint as minimal as possible, and we just won't opt you in.
Well, not being opted in, I totally get what you mean. And from a consumer standpoint, there's still that worry that, okay, well, this company gets sold to somebody else, or they sell their data to somebody, because data is so, like, Anton was saying, it's, next thing next to money. So it's
a good point. The movement of to stay out of the pool, Richard Farr says, no doubt.
Especially in an industry like this, that's always.
Turns out it was just a baby Ruth.
Tim soiled the pool.
It's a baby Ruth.
It's not a pool anymore. It's a sewer.
It's just a shifting industry, and information. I can imagine right now with places closing and opening up, it's all this information that people are gathering with consent. It's out there, and it's just all getting swapped around. So it's part of. I think it's part of society. It's part of the internet. It's part of the digital world. But you should have some control over that. You should have control over that.
I agree.
If we're able to opt out of using cookies on a website, we should be able to opt out of having our data shared when we make a cannabis transaction.
100%.
It'd be just as easy. I wish I could do that when you go to sign up. They take my telephone number. All of a sudden, I unknowingly now receive text messages at all hours of the day reminding me of the next sale coming up at Bunny Blue Bud Shop in Bloomington, Michigan. Which is a fictitious.
See, that's the thing. And that's the challenge for retailers. Like me as an operations guy, hearing you say that, that keeps me up at night. To be successful, I have to try and make you never feel that way.
Right.
We gotta, and that it goes back to Jim's point. I guess, we just have to say we know that there's data. Maybe it's a post on the website, but I think you guys are really making me think, especially Jim, is you want to honor that preference, right? You almost want to promote that we're the most aware of privacy provisioning center in the state. One of our top focuses is data safety, and you can almost make that a selling point for your provisioning center.
Never.
There are a lot of people that won't enter into a retail establishment because they're worried about getting on a list like that. Please go ahead, Jim. I'm sorry.
Well, our membership at Home of Medicine, I ran a dispensary in Ann Arbor, Michigan for a while. And back then we had membership sheets that people would fill out. A lot of people didn't want to fill those out. A lot of people didn't want to sign up for anything. Yeah. People were so scared in the beginning. And a lot of how I feel today, I think, kind of bleeds from that a little bit. People are a little bit more lenient with their information. I think I'm a rarity when it comes to that. I always change my cookies on any article I'm going to read, just to, try to keep up with that. It's difficult, but it's, for as many people that don't care, there's that many people I think that do and don't want you to touch anything.
I do a lot of public appearances with Redemption Cannabis, and we ask the people that receive the winnings that we do each time I'm there to pose with a photo. And I've been a ballpark 25 to 30% of the time, people say, no, I can't have my photo online in a dispensary because of fill in the blank. A variety of different, totally legit, completely above board reasons why they just don't want to have that associated with their name. So even though they're right there in the middle of using a cannabis retailer, they're still afraid to own it. And it's going to be that way for a while.
Wasn't wanting my picture up here just now, so, I understand.
All of us.
Never once have I responded, like with the text messages. That's the one thing, like unsolicited prodding, if you will, as a consumer. I never once have responded to that. I mean, sure, I'll go into Weed Maps if I'm looking for a particular retailer, what they have or whatnot. But the text messages are the one thing. It's like, I don't know why they bother me. But I get where stores are coming from. But it's just from a consumer standpoint, I wonder how effective those types of strategies really are.
They're not.
I mean,
They're not.
Junk mail is junk mail, right? Emails just clogs up your email bin, and I think it almost becomes counterproductive because it feels like they're pestering me, right? And I don't want that as the consumer, especially when I'm shopping for my weed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I can tell you when an industry is doomed because, especially in tech, the entire send text about selling weed industry, it's on a wing and a prayer. Like the deliverability is low double digits. Like it's less than 20%. Like consistent deliverability is like 20%, and conversion, like click and read, is below 5. So it's by any marketing standards, by any investment standards, by any cost effectiveness standards, the cannabis text thing is dead on the vine. Like it just doesn't work. What really works is the app thing. Again, going back to having a closed system where people opt in, and just a simple alert app gets that done.
Well, never mind. We live in a world now, and where sending unsolicited links. I mean, the threat of hackers and the threat of really doing harm. And then you think these companies that are doing these types of things, God forbid the first data breach that happens when some hacker sends out a come pick up your free weed, link. They click on it and all your shit is gone. Right. Like it seems like there's liability on that hasn't been discovered yet that you don't want to discover. You know what I mean?
I agree. And I didn't finish my point. My point about like these companies that are selling text to your cannabis customers, these services, they are gaming the system so much. Like they're already like gaming how to pass the spam filters. Like in other words, everybody knows the best way to work to get high ranks on Google, right? To come up high in search results is to have the best accurate information. That's how you win on Google, is that when people go to your website, it's exactly what they expected. It's not something, it's whatever the email you sent, whatever the YouTube ad that you ran, whatever the text thing that you sent. It has to be the same. It has to be what you expected, because Google is measuring whether you scroll down the page, how long it takes you to scroll down the page, how far you make it down the page. They're recording how long it takes you to hit the back button because the search result wasn't what you wanted. And these text messaging companies, these cannabis text messaging companies, they have like all the stuff that Google puts in to filter out spam and bad sites. These text messaging companies, they're like planning for that. Like they have a little box where you say metadata. Yeah. They have a little box for like, hey, this is a box for T-Mobile and Sprint because they have really heavy filters. And then here's your normal one for AT&T and everything else. I'm like, well, you're already losing. If you're making a separate box to try and game Sprint and T-Mobile, you've already lost. because they know that you just tried to send the one and that didn't work. So now you're sending this little one. You have to be white hat from the beginning. Anybody who's not white hat is going to lose.
And that's before the feds pick up on it and they start regulating that type of stuff. That's
right. And you might as well be white hat before that happens, because you're going to be fucked.
We've already seen companies in Michigan get in trouble. At least they were in the news for getting in trouble over sending unsolicited text messages. I know that the Attorney General's office has asked that if someone receives unsolicited text messages from cannabis companies, that they contact her office. Because it was a problem. But I think it's a lot more under control now. That I can't recall exactly which company was involved in that. But, it's an inexpensive way for someone to automatically, without human interaction, set up some kind of an automatic dialing system that delivers these texts. And, cheap merchandising and cheap advertising methodologies oftentimes fade.
Yeah.
The FCC has been pretty hands off. Oh, go ahead.
I get the feeling they I'm on the list and stuff, so I get them too. I don't feel overloaded with them. There is like a loyalty program, so you can check to see if you have points that are going to help out with discounts if you go into the store. Some practical use of, some of that, I guess. So sometimes I think it makes some sense, but I'm also on several lists, and I have to keep on saying, discontinue or exit or stop or whatever the shit you have to do on there. Because just going into a place and giving your information, basically sign up for that.
No, Tim's point about an app is really wise, though, because that is an opt-in opportunity for you, and you can deliver much more detail than you can in just a simple text message. If someone gets a link and they open the app, then you have all your multimedia opportunities to sell them up on whatever the special is. So.
Yep. Yeah, that's what's happening in retail, man. The race to the bottom is really something. I don't know. What are you guys hearing? Like, what's I come here to get information from you guys too. What's the state of the union, so to speak, on the race to the bottom? What are we thinking? What are we seeing?
Well, currently the MRA, last time I saw, it was about, they reported $130 an ounce as the average price of a retail a zip in Michigan.
Would you repeat that? Would you repeat that? How many?
130.
30. Okay.
Yep. So I believe it goes lower. I believe if we look at the model that other states are at or have been at, that you're looking at $100 ounces on a regular basis. Maybe some top shelf stuff. I also just posted today a story that I saw on social media, and celebrity endorsements only add approximately 4% of value to the cannabis product itself. So when someone says, "Oh no, Wiz Khalifa's name is on here," I can actually almost double the price of this cannabis. It's just not true. So the race to the bottom is a tragedy. But what's more tragic is that people at the higher echelons of planning and some of these larger corporations didn't foresee this and actually have profit margins that are modeled after a much higher level of wholesaling per ounce.
And some version of it's happened in the other states. There's models.
Oregon,
with the prediction, so.
Have you guys ever looked at an Oklahoma menu?
No.
Haven't, no.
Bro, don't look at it. You'll cry yourself to sleep. Don't look at an Oklahoma menu.
Why? What's the deal?
A gram, a cart, $7.99 retail.
$8.
Wow.
$8.
It was like $40 ounces in Colorado, but that $8 cart. Wow.
Yeah, well, it's the no cap states. The Oklahoma's got no cap.
Well, neither does California, neither does Michigan. Michigan's the number 3 state in the United States. Cali's the number 1. Now, Canada, of course, has a 3-year oversupply of cannabis that is trying really hard to get rid of. So does Oregon, rather. Washington State has a big oversupply as well, too. The model that Michigan's headed towards is very predictable. So I'm always
ultimately
amazed.
the better people will still pay for the better quality cannabis.
I think so. Yeah, because you there seems to be a divergence from higher quality weed to the race to the bottom stuff. At least I'm noticing, like, you can still charge for good weed. Like, and if it sells through and people know that it's clean, it's not coffee, it's not sore throaty, it's not, you can still sell like $40 eighths, $60 eighths. We're selling them. And I think that this race to the bottom might turn people towards better weed at some point. Because at some point it's diminishing returns if it's fucking $50 an ounce, but you cough and feel like shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and even if it's not that bad, even if it's usable, there is a market for that for a lot of people. But there are enough people that when that right balance of price comes down, it's still the quality. So it's still more than the other stuff. But at the sweet spot, that's what's happened in other states. In other words, so
Tim, the tipping point. Yeah.
Tim, I think what you described is exactly correct. If everyone has expendable income, but when people don't have additional income when things are tight, then money becomes the biggest driver, and they'll accept the sore throat and they'll accept the cough just to get that $50 up.
Well, some of it's not even that bad. It's just not the really good stuff.
Right. But my point being that I think Tim's right. People would prefer to smoke the $60 eighths. Everybody would, and if they had the money to do it, they would.
Yeah, when those $60 eighths now are like 40, maybe that's the sweet spot, and they'll
I can see that happening, and with these prices in the race to the bottom we're talking about, I can also see maybe bringing on hopefully some diversity in products, like maybe some new products, something to bring people in. Maybe get back to hash again. Get different types of hash and start to educate people about things like this. And that's what we need to get back to, what the essence of the flower of this plant can do.
Just speaking of that, I went to Winewood Organics and got their bubble hash after having Eric on the show and talking about it and stuff, and got a nice little puck.
Yeah.
That's how
It
cool.
was awesome. And it was,
Jim, you bring up a good point too. Like, how cool would it be to have like a little workshop? I don't know if it would be within the regulatory rules, but bring a group of people in, teach them how to roll old school temple balls, right? How to actually work with the hash in their hands and how to actually make their own medicine. Like, those are skills. Yeah. How to roll a joint, how to roll a blunt, how to skills on how to medicate.
Ida Pearl Lee from MICAA, friend of the show, kind of like working on a version of that to help, specifically women, I think, kind of get a small group of women together. So this is how you roll a joint and shit like that.
Yeah,
podcast. Yes.
Yeah.
Frenchy Cannoli used to do all that. You could go and take one of his classes, and he'd teach you how to make the old school bubble hash, how to separate out all the different resins, how to work it. And now with his passing, I think there's people that have kind of picked the ball up, so to speak. But those are skills that, God, it's like teaching a person how to fish. And those are the types of things that in the industry, anybody can walk into a dispensary and buy a $20 eighth of irradiated bullshit, right? But actually teaching people about what it is that they're consuming now you've taken it to another level.
I honestly think that this current fascination that we may be having with a terpene revolution, as I like to refer to it, people are really starting to pay attention more to those ancillary chemicals that construct the ensemble effect, not the entourage effect, but the ensemble effect, where all of the players are equal and we talk about them equally, and instead of just talking about THC as the big leader.
Yeah, single cannabinoid.
Yep, Lester Grinspoon. So the fact is the hash being one of those connoisseur type things, with concentrates, we ran towards the greatest THC percentage we could achieve and the greatest immediate high. Now that we've achieved that, and that sort of gosh, it's not at all. Now, if people are looking to get into more of a quality experience, which I believe they are slowly, but I believe they are, hash is the natural choice. I mean, Jim, you're a lover of hash. I know you are.
I'm one of the founding members of Hash Lovers of America, which is also a band.
What's your favorite way to consume hash, Jim?
To chill them, I think, is really great. I like the old school way of just getting a jar and turning it upside down.
The safety pin
Nice.
in a record cover, album cover.
That's
glass
Masking tape.
Yeah, that's really clean. You can see everything happening right there before your eyes. That's great. So,
Hot
what about
knives.
you, Anton?
These kids nowadays, they don't know none of that.
I like taking. I have the little volcano vaporizer. I take a little bit of herb and sprinkle a little bubble hash in there, and I find it gives you a good clean high. So actually, sometimes it's like I overdo it and go, "Whoa, I have to back off a little bit." But chill them as well. I do like that's a favorite as well.
What temperature do you do the volcano at?
I usually set it anywhere. Well, with hash, I normally keep it about 375.
Okay.
But I'll go up to around 400 if I'm doing bubble hash. I find it doesn't. If you go too high, it's not. I don't know what that thing tops out at, 425 or whatever. But 400ish is about where I like to keep it.
Hey, people interested in hash, here's a hint.
Hash Dome's available at Genesee County Compassion Club on July 10th this year. That's fantastic.
7-10, baby.
I might be motivated to take a trip up
far
there.
away. I will be in Inkster at Vibe, which is
Okay.
fun. I'm excited about going to
I'll be
Vibe.
there. Hash dome.
This is coming up, right? Today's what, the 5th?
Are those
Yeah.
domes
It's
you can walk
next Sunday.
into?
Sunday,
You can
okay.
walk into hash domes? I mean, that would be amazing.
I like
I
hash.
love
Well, and as a really excellent cultivator, gardener, is saying
Red
that
Setter
they have
Farm.
them ready to go. So I'm assuming they are pretty good.
Oh,
No
yeah.
reason to believe they are not.
Oh man, that's an interesting concept. We just got right over to hash here eventually, and now it's another revolution that our industry is facing too. To what point do we continue to feed this anti-intellectual THC infatuation, and when do we stop trying to define cannabis in the single most convenient and least definitive way? I mean,
Have you guys talked or celebrated the fact that the Emerald Cup abandoned the species and
We
went to?
We brought
Yeah,
that
that's
up
awesome.
briefly. Yeah, we thought that was
Okay,
pretty
cool.
Yeah.
I think that is the single, in terms of education, that's people are going to look back at the Cannabis Cup, or I'm sorry, the Emerald Cup making that move. I think it's going to be like the start of modern education.
It's
So
gotta
a lot of
start
people may not
someplace. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Rick.
may not be familiar with what you're referring to, but oftentimes cannabis competitions define themselves as indica category, sativa category, hybrid
Yeah.
category, and
Emerald Cup
they
left that.
got rid of all three of those categories and just went with straight testing and terpenes, and instead of trying to
Six-
define it in ways that didn't really
Because they're
matter.
basically meaningless.
Revolution.
6 different
individual.
terpene profiles. They settled on 6 different ones.
Yep, myrcene based and pine. There's a lot of different things, but
Yeah.
Yep.
And that was
revolution.
where we had Lave on here from Spivak Berndorf from PSI Labs, and he was discussing contributing some data to some of those studies that concluded that it's misleading. A lot of descriptions of cannabis, and terpenes are a better way of looking to see where some different
Totally.
types are.
That's Scilabs, by the way.
Yep. So
And most people don't even know that science has, there's never been a consensus on indica sativa. Do you guys know that?
Yeah, I do know that. I don't know the history, but somebody just decided this is what it was, wrote it into the book, and there it is, 100 plus years later. So I mean, that's the only reason why it's like that. It's not substantiated.
I did hear some interesting pushback as we talk about this education thing progressing. Chris Yerman, one of our buyers and one of our owners, he said he kind of was concerned about indica and sativa sort of going away or becoming gauche, because they're still valuable descriptors. And I told him I don't think that they'll go away as adjectives. They're just going away as authorities. The sativa indica thing is just
They can describe some things. They just can't predict effect.
correct.
It's more ambiguity. It's like indica leaning or sativa.
Well, the morphology of
Sure.
the plant. The thin leaves are the sativas. The wider leaves are the indicas.
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
have longer growing periods and things like that too. There are some morphological issues between the two, at least what we traditionally would consider to be those two lines.
Yeah. I think this is it, man. This is like you know, you guys have been at so many flashpoints. I'm talking to Jamie and Rick. Like, you guys have been literally physically involved with so many flashpoints in the legalization, and you know, and I think we're really at a flashpoint. Like this year, we're kind of like cannabis served its purpose through the pandemic. You know, a lot of things were like this whole curbside fulfillment thing, and you know, all of that was forced by the pandemic. You know,
Yeah.
and so we're in a post-pandemic cannabis industry. And it's weird that we're post anything in cannabis because cannabis is so nascent. So it's like we've already matured. We survived. Our industry lasted past
Well,
the
it was
pandemic.
considered a what was the term? The businesses that were stayed open during the shutdown.
Fulfillment.
Essential.
So it's
They were essential.
oh, essential. Yes.
I mean, that was a great recognition in and of itself. Or, you know,
I
good
know.
move
Cannabis
forward
businesses
for-
were called
for
essential.
Necessity is the best innovator sometimes, right?
And remember that prior to the pandemic, we'd had conversations with thing about online ordering and curbside delivery and drive-through windows, and it had been routinely shut down. And then, of course, the emergency comes up, and those ideas become a lot less problematic when you're in a situation like we faced. So I think you're right. That really did advance society's perception of the dangers of those things, and really kind of just swept it aside as it should have been.
Curbside continues to get used in a lot of businesses now, which I mean, somebody like Josie is geeked about that. You know, to get in and out of the car and all that kind of stuff is to be able to say, "Hey, bring the shit to the car." She's talked about it. It's become an improvement in her, you know, in her and probably many people's lives.
I'm so fortunate to have the seat that I have because I can open up our operations and I can see the registers at our different locations. And guys, the fulfillment and delivery portion of the business is robust as fuck. I mean, and you wouldn't even believe the time of days I'm talking about. Like this, like whatever the pandemic did a favor for the weed business by forcing that curbside, the order fulfillment. I mean, you couldn't even conduct orders very well online before the pandemic. Like you, as an operator, you had to build your menu from scratch. Like they didn't have the APIs to sort of put your menu on your own website. You had to go in there and curate.
Continuously manually make the changes. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you had to curate every morning. Curate your weed maps. Curate your Dutchie. Curate your Leafly. You know, and if you weren't doing that, you weren't selling weed at the curb for the pandemic. Like it was shit or get off the pot.
Tim, let me ask you a question because you are an operator of a facility. The scenario you just described is an awful lot of external cannabis interactions, meaning interactions that don't take place inside the Apple Store looking retail facility with the very nice countertops and the gorgeous floors and the very expensive fixtures. So at what point does a cannabis operator decide that investment in infrastructure just isn't paying off because there's such a big percentage of their use is taking place in the absence of that?
My answer is going to expose how young the industry is. They don't care. So the IKEA, I call that an IKEA provisioning center. There's an IKEA provisioning center, and then there's a party store provisioning center in Michigan. Those are the two species.
IKEA and party store? Nice.
Yeah, IKEA and party store. The IKEA ownership always was going to have an IKEA showroom because of their culture, their predilections, their preferences, their aesthetic. There's some aesthetic guy in ownership somewhere. There's some, fucking designer, or there's an interior. My wife's an interior designer, like somebody usually in the founder group. It's driven by the members of the founder group, the original investors, and then their nepotism. So if the founder group comes from a party store culture, ain't nobody going to be talking about IKEA because nobody in that group cares about an IKEA looking showroom, right? If that's, if the founder group, the investor group, is people that are college educated, maybe they were in industrial design, or maybe they were somebody in interior design.
Came from the fashion industry, yeah.
Yes, and then like with Joyology, one of the founders owned an ad agency, and they made a kick-ass brand identity. Joyology made a great logo, made a good-looking, repeatable blueprint for stores. And I think Joyology, and I'm saying this honestly, it's the only thing that I've seen that's close to a hybrid between IKEA and Party Store. That's all I can say. We have, we try to have stations at our retail locations where each station is stocked like most stores. That's kind of like our pride and joy. Is like, we have 3 recreational centers at our flagship store in Wayne, across from the Ford plant, 3 rec, 1 med. And we are proud to say that each of those stations is as well kitted as most stores.
Cool. And where's the
And
one
that's,
med?
what's that?
Where's the one med store?
Oh, no. A med set station I'm talking about our flagship store,
in the
Wayne.
store.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm just giving an example. Our flagship store is Wayne, Michigan Avenue, and sort of the state of the union right now is 3 rec stations, bud tender stations, and 1 med bud tender station.
So you can ideally take care of 4 different patients, customer at the same time.
Yeah, and our big thing is just try to make each of those stations a store level experience. We try to have as much behind the bud tender in each of those stations as we can. As much of the store's offering is at each station.
Got it.
So,
yep, seen that style. Okay, cool.
yeah.
So as we are kind of like, we got a few minutes left, but we're somewhat getting toward the end of today. On top of anything else going on politically with the department, anything like that you'd like to get into, Tim? And then it's also just quick, I'd like to get from everybody, what their continue this discussion a little bit about independence. I was really moved by Nathan's kind of presentation and then Anton's subsequent discussion with him, and I just everybody wants to feel free toward the end here to kind of comment on that or your own kind of perspective on it. I mean, that's one of the things I wanted to get into today. But please wrap up on industry stuff if you don't mind, and then let us know what you think.
I just want to thank you guys for having me on again. I mean, I really appreciate having a relationship with you guys, being able to reach out to you and Rick, and it's just really cool. And thank you for having me on the show. If I could say something, I guess I'll start. Consumers, it doesn't mean I wouldn't stop by, Tim, to check your place out. Please stop in, Richard. Please. Yeah, please. Anytime, be my guest. Personal guest.
Oh, I see. It's because he says he doesn't use IKEA style.
Oh, IKEA style. Yeah. We're good.
Okay.
Check out Joyology. See if I'm right, Richard. See if we're a good mixture. I'd like to know from somebody. I'd like to tell consumers, stay on retailers. If something's wrong, if something's incorrect, don't ever be ashamed. Call. I didn't get the right thing. My shit was underweighed. My eighth was not a good selection of buds. I had all smalls. You guys didn't even give me one fatty in my prepackaged eighth. Like anybody who's listening, who's a medical patient, card holder, or just a retail adult user, please hold politely and respectfully, hold retailers like us accountable. Continue to do that. And I'm going to tell you the most productive way to do it is to do it right when it happened. As soon as you see something wrong, something was weighed wrong, something doesn't work, the cart doesn't burn right, call or go back to where you bought it as soon as you can and give them the chance and the time to remedy it. And if they don't, go ahead, blast them on the review, move to a different provisioning center, but keep retailers on their toes and keep them accountable and give them a chance to fix what they did wrong.
Right on. Yeah. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks, guys.
Throw in about our independence, a couple lines on your perspective on the
our nation.
Yeah.
At
this time,
I believe it's no secret that our country's at an inflection point, right? There's just no getting around it. We're in, everything's very precarious right now. But I still believe in our country. I still believe in the experiment. I think that all that the past 5 to 7 years has shown us that there are bad actors, and the larger, regardless of what fucking jersey you're wearing, red or blue, it doesn't matter. I think there's still an American. There's still something called an American. And I know it's fucking sketchy right now, but look what we're doing. 6 people from around the country, around the state. We heard about Nathan's story and we connected him to so many other people. Like, America is us. That's what I want to say. America is us. This is America. The fucking news isn't America. Politicians aren't America. This exactly right here. This is America. So as long as we Americans keep doing this shit, which is basically just an extension of ham radio, just fucking keep talking, keep having conversations. This is America. None of the other shit is America.
Well said.
Thank you, man. Hey, Jim, do you want to chime in on this before we wrap it up?
Sure. Yeah. Independence Day is, obviously things are a little crazy right now. To Tim's point, there's, some different, red and whites or red and blues or whatever. And that whole mix of people, I try not to think in those terms. I try to think in like the terms of, everyone's got a voice. And right now, a lot of the voices we hear, we just got to make sure that they're ours. And we got to make sure that we don't get overridden on our voice from these other groups that want to scream at us. And, when it comes to legislature and our freedoms of being able to go to legislature and, educate the next wave of new, representatives and senators so that they don't make the same mistakes that people almost made in the last 6 months with caregiver bills, and that's the kind of freedom I guess I think about just from cannabis, being able to work in the industry and run a cannabis business for almost 10 years and feel that freedom to be able to stand kind of over that line while it was illegal, so to speak, and deal with those stresses. I mean, that felt like there was some freedoms there for me. I know that when I say that, I automatically think about people who are incarcerated still today that don't have their freedoms because of cannabis. And that just takes everything I've just said and just flushes it down the toilet. So, it's up and down. We've got a fucked up country with a lot of hypocrisy. I'm done. Thank you.
But I guess for me, and I'll go real quick and see if you guys have any follow-up thoughts, Anton and Nathan. But I don't like it. I don't like a lot what's going on, but I'm kind of motivated by it, and I'm seeing a lot of other people motivated by it. And I think that's part of the process. We now respond, and we try to make changes, and we take it as far as we can, and whatever we affected now becomes the new state of things. And I think a lot of people saw dangerously how extreme we can kind of go. And that is going to change perspective, and we respond now. We reel it back in. I really don't like what's going on, though. Hey, Nathan, is there anything you want to add?
Thank you. I just want to say that I appreciate being here today. Thank you. And Tim, you're right. What we're doing here. This is America. What we're trying to accomplish here. The industry, the work that everybody here is doing, not so much myself. I'm one of the ones that is receiving the benefits of your work. And I appreciate it. Thank you. I've been out there doing my own kind of work, and it's not seen a lot, about what's going on in America here. Trying to bring an awareness, as a First Nations person, Indigenous person, trying to open up people's minds and hearts to this great experiment, because it is an experiment, what we're doing here. People came here to this land and they talked about that experiment to the people, old ones. And that's why we still keep our treaties. And that's why we still say, honor those treaties. Because that's what this experiment is based on, is those treaties with the people who were here first,
No
who
doubt.
came here. There's a lot of troubles over there, and now those troubles are here. And part of the prophecies was in this experiment, until those that came here are treated like us, things won't change. So that's what we're seeing. People are starting being treated like us. They're being treated like Indians.
Whoa.
That's intense. Hey, man, thank you, Nathan. We'll have you back on at some point, man. We'll try to follow up with you too a little bit, man. Appreciate you spending the time with us today as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
God, thank you guys. Thank you.
Anton, anything you want to add, man?
Yeah, I'll always say as a person who actually, fought for our freedom, I always say that I believe in the idea of America. I may not always agree with how that translates into policy or legislation, but I think as long as we all agree that the idea and the great experiment that many believed wasn't going to work, it's on all of us to kind of progress that and to approach each other with compassion and empathy and realize that each and every one of us are just experiencing the human condition the best that we can, and everybody's going through something. And if we keep that in the back of our minds and approach each other with respect, mutual respect, I think that hopefully things will get better.
Right on. Rick, you want to wrap us up, man?
Well, apathy is the enemy. Anger and hate is the enemy. And when we talk about what we had on the show today, what we learned is that the opportunity to come together and to actually fight apathy is primed. Jamie was right. A lot of the negative things that have happened now have driven people to greater involvement in the politics of the moment. And I think if you ask people in America, are you a good American? The vast majority of them would say yes. But if you ask people, do you like pizza? Most people would say yes. But their idea of pizza is all different. Some are flat crust, some of them are thick. Some people hate pepperoni and some people hate pineapple. So the fact of the matter is, people can have a different idea of what a good American is and still believe that they're fulfilling that role in their heart, which means they still can be saved. We can still bring people together towards a greater understanding. But what it does mean is that we have to decide what it means to be an American. Do we respect women's rights? Do we respect the treaties that we made with the First Nations? Do we honor international agreements that we've made? Do we stay in NATO? Do we stay with the Paris Accords and fight climate change? Who are we? That has a lot to do with where we're going. And right now, we haven't figured out who we are yet. After more than 200 years of our occupation of this land. So when it comes down to it, America needs to pull its big boy pants up, strap on some suspenders, and figure out who the fuck they are. Because then we can move forward. And right now, without identity, there's only chaos.
Right on.
Thank you,
man.
Rick. Jesus.
Of course, those who have anchovy on the pizza are pure of heart.
Oh, I hate you. Oh my God, he's such a big anchovy fan that smells so bad when he have pizza. Jesus, oh my God.
Anyway, appreciate it. There was some intensity today. I was moved, and I appreciate everybody's involvement. And we'll be back again next week. Thanks a lot, Tim. Thanks a lot, Nathan. Thanks a lot, you guys.
Great time.
Peace.
Bye.
Keep your chin up, Nathan.